Welcome to the Waterfront episode of the Land and Blast podcast. For most people looking for property, would it be safe to say that this is probably the most sought after thing in Oregon, waterfront property?
If you're talking about rural property, it's got to be the number one requested thing is live water.
Okay. Why is that? I have some opinions, but I want to ask, why is that?
So, well, number one, I think it's scarcity.
Okay.
I mean, there's the natural beauty aspect of it. There's a recreational aspect of it, but I think there's just something about the scarcity. Like they're not making
few and far
any
between.
more dirt
on water.
Yeah, and water's getting harder and harder to find. Like what used to be strong streams, with drought recently, are not necessarily.
Yeah, it was a game changer.
So, speaking of that, with why do people want to be on water? I think we get a lot of people who start the process say, "I want to be on water." And I say, "Well, describe to me what you want to be on. Mm-hmm. What kind of water? Do you? Well, I just want some kind of water feature." I get that all the time. And as we start to go through the process, and I call it, as we start to peel back the onion of what someone is looking for, and I'm going to kind of use myself as an example in this because I think it's a. I've had the luxury of selling property of almost every one of these different kinds, with the exception of oceanfront. Mm-hmm. That's still on my bucket list, I guess. Yeah. But you name it, from rivers to creeks to private lakes to, I guess I have sold one lakefront, or a couple lakefront properties that shared access on a bigger lake. Mm-hmm. But what I always tell people is I say, not all water was created equal, and not all people were created for the same kind of water.
Absolutely.
Kind of butchered that a little bit.
No, but not everybody's looking for the same body of water and not looking at the same stream.
So generally speaking, I'm just going to describe the different kinds of live water that we see. And here in Southern Oregon, I mean, the number one water source in the area is the Rogue River. Mm-hmm. Rogue River, I call it big water, but technically it's a navigable river. That means a few different things. Navigable means that, number one, you can expect traffic. Mm-hmm. And that's, maybe it's not part of the definition of navigable, but you need to expect traffic.
Yeah, there's going to be people out there enjoying that body of water.
Lots of rafts,
kayaks,
boats, you name it. Navigable also means that you own to the high water mark. And there's probably a little bit more to unpack there, but that, generally speaking, technically if you had a really nice bank, someone could roll up in a raft, stop on it, and they're not trespassing on your property.
Right. So, and I've seen that happen up north where I'm at. People come through, they stop on a piece of property, they fish and keep going, or down in the Shady Cove area. See it all the time. People stop, fish the hole, and then move on.
Yeah. Exactly. So the Rogue River, though it's the most notable river and has by far the most amount of available property on it, a lot of clients I have, some people just love the big water and they want to sit on it. They love the rafts. They love the boats going by. It's part of the lifestyle experience. But I also have a lot of clients who go, I want privacy too.
Sure.
And being on a big river is not private in the summer.
No.
I mean, you get maybe 1,000 people go by on a raft in front of you.
Yeah.
Like it's not private. It's also not super kid friendly. It's dangerous water.
Yeah, there's going to be some risk there.
Millions of gallons
grandkids or kids running around
flowing by at any one moment. So that's what I call big water, navigable river. The best example of that here in Southern Oregon is the Rogue. The non-navigable rivers, which in our area in Jackson County, the best example is the Applegate River. Mm-hmm. So it is a more private river. You can still run a boat on it, but the banks are private.
Okay.
There's a lot of restrictions on the fishing and how you can fish. So you really can't, you can really commute on the river, but you can't do a lot of fishing. So it is very private in how the rules are written.
Sure.
The Applegate's also, I couldn't tell you the exact number, but if I just off a gut level, is probably 1/8 the size of the Rogue.
Okay.
Still big water.
Yeah.
It's still a significant body of
water moving through there. Yeah.
But it is much smaller, much more friendly, much easier to get in it and just cool down. Some of the swimming holes are you can truly have a swimming hole. It's not just a current all the time in front of you. But the biggest thing is on the Applegate, it's private, and in many ways it's more picturesque. It doesn't have the same overwhelming, oh my goodness, this thing is big and impressive.
Powerful,
It's not, powerful is a good word. But the Applegate is much more picturesque, more friendly, and definitely more private.
Mhm.
I also put the Applegate River in the same category, for example, as Big Butte Creek and Little Butte Creek. And there's a handful of other creeks in the valley that in many other areas would probably be classified as rivers.
Sure.
Like they're significant bodies of water. They're not as big as the Applegate, but they're strong, year-round, spring-fed creeks that have fish in them. Oh, one of the other things, as we go through this, every stream has a different set of rules for fishing.
Yeah.
So we'll get to that later.
Yeah, that's its own can of worms.
Yeah. We're not giving legal advice here.
Yeah, no. Definitely not.
But the strong creeks to me, again, same non-navigable status.
Mm-hmm.
They're private. They got good year-round flows. They're more picturesque. But, again, they're not as powerful, as impactful.
Yeah.
But the Applegate and like Little Butte Creek and Big Butte Creek and some of those others, in many ways, are the target of many rural property buyers because you get the privacy aspect of it as well. On the creek side, you do have some smaller year-round creeks that truly would be creeks, and that some of them may be spring-fed, and some of those can be a true diamond in the rough.
Yeah.
But they're not that same level of beauty or impressiveness, but they can be really cool still. And then almost every property, it feels like, has a seasonal creek on it. Mm-hmm. But as drought has continued to be a thing,
They've gone underground sometimes.
Not sometimes. Some of these are like 1 month out of the year creeks.
Yeah.
Like right after a rain for 2 days and then
You
it's
have
dry.
water. Yeah.
So seasonal creeks, just because it's on a map, does not mean it's a creek.
there, yeah.
It may mean it's just a stream of dry rocks.
Yeah, and there's there's layers in there. It's
Yeah. So from the rivers and creek side, that's kind of a summary of what we see here as different options. And I think it's pretty similar in your area. The waters aren't quite as big over there, and you have some better fly fishing opportunities.
Yeah, and it's like you touched on. I mean, like the Deschutes River, I think, is going to be kind of akin to the Rogue, where you're going to be able to
just about a quarter the size.
Yeah, it's much smaller, but you're able to float on it. You're restricted from fishing from boats, and so you're able to access other people's land from below the high water mark and so forth. And then, very similar to the Applegate, but again on a smaller scale, you have like the Fall River, the Crooked River, non-navigable. Yeah, but excellent fishing. Beautiful privacy, quintessential picturesque, stunningly beautiful.
Yeah,
like the Fall River is like a friggin' aquarium. Like it is just, you can see right at the bottom.
We don't have anything gin clear, they call it. Gin clear.
Gin clear. That's exactly right.
The Wood River is another one that's just like that over in Klamath.
Yes, exactly. I was just there the other day, and it's stunning. So so there's a wide variety of these things, but they all kind of fall into the same baskets across the board.
Yep. Switching gears from the stream river kind of setting to other types of bodies of water. One thing that I think we don't have a lot of in Southern Oregon, but is lakefront property. Other areas on the coast, 10 miles got a ton of lakefront houses. And as you go north, there's a bunch of other places that have lakefront properties. We have some cabins around here that are pseudo lakefront. They're kind of resort cabin type deal. Lake of the Woods is true lakefront.
Right.
But you got Diamond Lake, you have Fish Lake, cabins, different things. But we don't have a lot of lakefront. Like I know where my family's from back in Carolinas, like lakefront property is a big deal. Yeah. Like there's thousands, millions of houses, it feels like, on lakes.
And I noticed, like in the fishing population, depending on whether you're a West Coast person or East Coast person, how people define lakes versus ponds is kind of a slippery slope of definition.
5 acres.
5 acres. I was
5 acres.
5 acre lake. Yeah, exactly. And they'll call it a lake, and they'll put bass in it. They'll put perch in it. But yeah, people have different definitions of what a lake is.
Yeah, and I think technically speaking, 5 acres is the division line. Yeah. So that is the next thing I was going to. So we don't have a lot of shared, like true big lake, like lakefront. There's a little bit here or there. Like I said, I've sold one property on 10 Mile. I've sold a cabin up at Diamond Lake, a little bit. Possibly my favorite feature, though, is a private lake. I have sold a couple of properties that had true private lakes. And what I mean by that is, and they're typically irrigation reservoirs. So they're classified as a reservoir, but they function like a private lake. Some of them range in size generally. The biggest one our company was involved with had 60 surface acres.
Wow, okay.
That was back in the day, Indian Lake Ranch. Garrett did that.
Okay, yeah, that's a big lake.
I have been involved with one that was 10 acres and one that was 5 acres. Okay. And these private lakes, first off, it's amazing fishing for kids. You can get on a boat
And go pal around.
Go paddle around. You can go paddleboard. You have full control over it. You can stock it with whatever fish you want within the basic guidelines of the state. You can use it for irrigation. The ones I was talking about.
Yeah.
You could. You can. One of them, the guy wakeboarded on it.
Oh, that's pretty awesome.
Yeah, it was really awesome. Like he had it set up for wakeboarding.
That's
it was
pretty
phenomenal.
Slick. Yeah.
But if I had to pick, stream, lake, all those different things, Rogue River, I'm either, in my mind, like a really cool setting where I own both sides of a Applegate or both sides of a strong creek.
Yeah.
Or on private lake. Like me, I love privacy. Like that's where I look at. Those lake properties at any one time, there may be zero on the market for a whole year.
Yeah.
Or longer. The next thing is we kind of go down the spectrum of these reservoirs is ponds.
Yeah.
And ponds are a slippery slope. When you get a 5 acre or better body of water, they're permitted.
Yeah.
Like they've gone through the steps with Oregon Water Resources to be permitted. You may have things you have to do. Ponds, on the other hand,
It could be kind of weird.
ponds are complicated.
Yeah.
Ponds can be permitted as a reservoir. They can be permitted, and this is, a lot of these are like quarter acre kind of things. Most of them are not permitted.
Yeah, they're just a hole in the ground with water that somebody's...
Yeah, and back in the 90s, like everyone was supposed to register the ponds. So if you have a registered pond, like that's where you should be.
Yeah.
But a lot of people didn't do it. In hindsight, I wish everyone would have, but it is what it is. But ponds also can serve other purposes, not just aesthetics, not just fishing. If they're registered, for reservoirs, they're often part of an irrigation system.
Yeah, and that's big time up where
you're dumping water into them from your irrigation source and then appropriating that water onto the property through your irrigation system. Those are sometimes called bulges. They're sometimes called reservoirs. They're sometimes called just a holding system. But ponds, again, like I said, sometimes they can be really awesome. They're always good for shooting ducks.
I was going to say, I call them...
They're always good for shooting ducks. But, there's definitely things to be aware of. And also they can be just a giant mosquito trap.
Yep.
So
that is also known to happen.
So if I had the choice between having a property that did have a pond or didn't, sure.
Yeah,
absolutely.
take a pond.
There's totally things you can do with it.
Yeah.
Would I rather have live water that was moving? Most of the time.
Yeah.
If I could have both?
Every day of the week.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
The last thing, which isn't really a big deal for either of our hometowns, is ocean.
Yeah.
Still haven't knocked that one off my bucket list.
Yeah.
But, the waterfront aspect of ocean, especially the view side of it, we know as a real estate market as a whole is a huge deal. Look at California.
Oh my gosh.
Oh my goodness. You get this little sliver over your 25th neighbor's roof and
You have ocean.
you get $1 million premium.
Yeah, exactly.
Like ridiculous. But but those are the kinds of, really it's the big rivers, the smaller non-navigable rivers, the strong creeks, the different kinds of creeks, the lakes and the ponds that we're, constantly trying to kind of sift through for people. The one common thing with all that, scarcity.
Yeah, there are not a lot of those properties.
If you want to come look at 5 waterfront properties today between $1 million and $2 million that has a decent house in Southern Oregon, I don't know if I can show you 5.
Sure.
I might be able to show you 2. That have some acreage.
Yeah.
It's just the scarcity aspect of live water. Even when we have bigger inventories, it's a little bit different, but they still moved probably 30 to 50% more consistently than properties without live water. So,
makes sense. And then when you're qualifying people too, a lot of people start talking about being on the water.
Yep.
But then, I don't know about you, but the conversation I end up having with people is about, well, do you need to be on it or do you need to access it?
Correct.
What are you actually going to do with this body of water? Do you need to be right here?
Right.
Or can you drive 5 minutes?
Yeah.
Or can you
walk?
Yeah, exactly.
Ride a bike.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that access is a twofold thing. It also can be from your property.
Sure.
Am I fine with high bank and I'm just looking at it because I'm 75 years old or 80 years old?
And I want to hear the creek running or whatever.
I just want to look at it?
Yeah.
Or is it all about physically being able to fish it or being able to access it for swimming or whatever it is?
Yeah, and it turns into a type of recreational use.
So let's say we narrowed it down that I only want to be on the Applegate River. Do I need to see it from my house? Do I want to see it from every room in my house?
Right. Yeah.
Am I okay with it just touching my property? Am I okay with high bank? Do I need low bank? Live water is an endless list of trade-offs.
Yeah, and for each individual client that you're working with, or for each individual person pursuing that, the requirements are going to be entirely different.
Correct. The other piece, obviously, we just touched on a couple times, was like the recreational opportunities. For example, Big Butte Creek and Little Butte Creek are nearly closed fisheries.
Okay.
Amazing bodies of water to live on. But according to Fish and Game,
Can't throw a line in the water.
you just get to watch the salmon swim by.
I would die. I would die. Like, come on, guys, let's go.
So, those kinds of things. Or the boating situation. Like, are you allowed to run a powerboat? Or is it drift boat only?
Yeah.
Swimming, is it safe? Is it not safe?
When, like, for us in Central Oregon too, can you have a motor on the boat, and if so, is it a gas-fed motor or is it an electric motor?
Correct.
And those bodies of waters differ.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. And then, other things, one thing I think is really funny. First time people from out of the area jump in the Rogue River. Did I just jump in like a polar plunge?
It is
like, it is
freezing.
cold.
Yeah.
And it's cold all the way through the year.
Mm-hmm.
And, certain things like that, just like the general enjoyment of being on the water. What do you plan to do? I want to swim, or I want to be able to put my feet in the water. Great. Do you want a polar plunge? Because I'll take you to the Rogue.
Yeah, but a slow-moving swimming pool-esque vibe on an eddy. Yeah.
Yeah, let's go find a piece that's got some water you can enjoy. It might end up being a pond. It might end up being, maybe get lucky and you have your own lake or something like that, depending on what your budget is. But like knowing what you're getting into, even the silliest thing like that. The first time I jumped in the Rogue, I was like,
I'm out of here.
we're getting back out right now because I can't feel my feet anymore.
Yeah, it's cold.
Yeah.
It's really cold.
So, with that though, again, we're talking about just this constant trade-off. You want live water. It's not cookie cutter. Everything is different. There's another piece to live water that I think is really difficult, and it comes back to the scarcity thing, where people want live water. It comes back to the why. There is actually almost like an emotional or a therapeutic part to water flowing by.
And that's why people have those white noise machines.
Yeah.
It's a very...
Or water features.
Exactly.
Like they spend $100,000 building like this elaborate lazy river through their front yard. I'm exaggerating slightly, but
it's true, yeah.
And they got this little riffle right outside their bedroom.
Yeah.
Like there's the other piece to the live water that truly, and there's definitely, I couldn't quote the studies that I read, but I've read about a couple times where there's true health benefits, de-stressing benefits to living on water.
Absolutely. And like that was the Sand Creek cabin that I sold. Like that had a year-round creek on it, very small. There maybe was a fish in it.
Yeah.
You could legally fish it, but that wasn't really the point. The people that ended up buying it, they wanted to go to the cabin, pull out a lawn chair, and sit and listen to the creek. That was like their end-all, be-all happy place.
Yeah.
And that's entirely the emotionality of it. It's where do I go to feel good? Where do I go to, if you live in a city, do you want to escape to a place that you can kind of just sit and de-stress all the stuff that you're carrying with you?
Absolutely. Before we finish this conversation, though, there's definitely one thing. If we're going to touch on water, we got to talk about water rights.
Sure.
And we have a whole podcast on water rights, which dives into the weeds. I just want just a quick reminder.
For all of you listening at home.
Yes. Remember, there's a huge difference between living on water and having legal rights to said water.
Yeah.
Just because you touch the water doesn't mean you can use it. It belongs to the state.
And you have to...
You can recreationally use it.
Yeah, but you don't have a right to deploy it.
Correct. So if you want to irrigate with it, you need to have a water right. If you want to store it, you need to have a water right. If you want to use it for hydroelectric power, you still need a water right. If you want to divert it for fish habitat, you still need a water right. If you want to store it for fire even, you still need a water right. Fair. So not to harp on water rights,
But just a quick touch.
Just a quick touch, a quick
light
reminder. Look up that podcast we have on
Water rights
and listen for a lot more information.
10 times.
No, that'll be painful.
Okay.
You got to listen to me for that'd be like 10 hours of listening to me.
Listen to Chris for an hour.
Yeah, yes.
And then give us a call. We'll talk more about it. Yeah.
So, question for you.
Yes.
Name your top 2 or 3 bodies of water that you enjoy. And why?
Okay. Great question. Thank you. For me, like easiest to access, most beautiful place to take people, the Fall River.
Okay.
And it's already tracked out. It's already been blown out. I don't mind sharing it with everybody. The Fall River is amazing. I mean, it is a spring-fed river that you can literally park at the headwaters, watch the water bubble out. If you wanted to put a cup underneath it and drink it, I'm not recommending it, but you can. And it is ice cold. It's a stocked river, so it's fly fishing only. But when my mom comes to visit, when I have friends from out of town, it's always on that short list of places to go take people and have an amazing experience.
Yep.
If you want to have the fly fishing event of a lifetime, the Deschutes River during the salmon fly hatch. And it's people fly in from around the world is an epic ecological event. You're watching bugs that are the size of my hand fly around and smack you in the face and then land on the water, and watching a monster trout just come out and smack that thing. So you could literally throw any piece of floating something with a hook on it and they will be hammering
So
it.
you mean I could actually catch a fish?
You could catch the fish of a lifetime on the Deschutes River during the salmon fly
call
hatch.
me.
I will. Yeah, it just happened, but we'll get out there again. Yeah. But it's a Memorial Day summertime activity.
The salmon fly hatch probably just happened on the Rogue, or is happening as we speak.
I've got the fly rods in the car.
Yeah, you should check that out before you go home.
I'm going to do that. Yeah. And then on the flip side of that, where in Bend, as the Deschutes moves through town, there's the whole floating aspect and social aspect. We have the music down there at the Hayden Homes Amphitheater, so you can float the river with your friends, enjoy your time out there, and also listen to Chris Stapleton was just out there, and Erica took photos of the sunset. Bright pinks, bright reds, bright purples. It looked like a highly saturated Sony photo, but it was just 100%, 100% no filter. And then if you wanted to access something a little bit different, we do have some reservoirs out there. Prineville Reservoir is great. There's all the High Lakes. Crane Prairie is one of my favorites for the mix between fishing and hunting. Excellent duck hunting, amazing fishing, and then you're able to also run boats on it. So
Gotcha.
those would be kind of my quick takeaways.
Gotcha.
What about you?
I'm glad you started, because I'm having to think about this for a minute. So I'm going to answer a little bit differently.
Okay.
I'm going to answer from the perspective of which one would I want to buy a piece of property on first. Now, if I couldn't buy a private lake, I'm going to assume that I'm not quite in that income bracket yet.
Fair.
If I was going to live water, I would be looking, first choice would be the Applegate River down here. And the second choices for me would be any of those Butte creeks that I mentioned, or there's a few other creeks that have pretty consistent flows. But I'm a fan of those private, a little bit bigger streams. I'd be looking for a property that was on both sides of it, because I really don't want to look at my neighbor right across.
Yeah.
Switching gears, if I had to pick a favorite for fishing on the creek river kind of side, I'm gonna go with the Rogue, because that's obviously the ridiculously low hanging fruit. But here's what I'm gonna say: if you want to have a really good time, pay the money to hire a guide.
Sure.
Just go do it 1 or 2 times. It's not that expensive. If I'm speaking from someone who hunts and shoots, not someone who fishes all the time. But for me, it's worth it, and it's a social event for me. We'll talk about that in the next podcast.
Yeah, absolutely.
But the last thing, though, if I'm going to something I just did a couple weeks ago, it's a newfound fun passion for me, is combining backpacking and fishing. And through the Cascades, there's an area called the Sky Lake Wilderness.
Yeah.
It's like 110,000 acres. I forget how many lakes are up there, but hundreds. There's some gems
I believe
in there.
Yeah.
And sorry, but I'm not going to go any further I'm not naming lakes.
Don't name spots.
But there's some gems up there and beautiful country. And, some of them are only, half a mile walk into, pretty easy. Some of them are 5-10 mile kind of trips, round trip. But 2 weekends ago, if I would have put even a little bit more effort, I would have caught 50 brookies,
Man,
in a day.
I need to go up there sometime.
Yeah.
I saw those photos with you and Ben. It looked incredible up there.
I was slacking hardcore. Like my heart really wasn't in the fishing. I was just enjoying being there and hanging out with my son. But if I would have fished hard, I mean, I had probably 35 brookies on the line. Landed about 20.
That's awesome. Were you fly fishing or using trad gear?
All spinners.
All spinners.
Yeah, just a little dinky little spinning rod.
That's awesome.
And just panther martins and rooster tails.
Yeah.
It was, and they were hungry.
It sounds like a blast.
Yeah, and I mean, I caught a couple that were in that range, but most of them were fairly dinky. But it was still a blast.
That's awesome.
So yeah, the new thing for me is the combining like the backpacking, camping with going to a place to fish.
Yeah, and I've accidentally discovered some of those places while I've been out hunting.
Yeah.
And, particularly during bow season, and look out on this little, like, alpine lake, and all of a sudden you start seeing fish start hitting the surface. Mm-hmm. So I started carrying, like, this little tiny fishing tackle box with a couple hooks, weights, and a line.
Yeah.
Because it's like, why not? If you're out there, enjoy it.
Yeah. I think that's what we're supposed to talk about today.
Yeah.
I think that's a wrap.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you for joining us. We appreciate you tuning in, and
hope
more to come.
More to come. Have a good day.